Hello, everybody. So this is I'm continuing a series that I started a while back, actually probably back in the beginning, which I titled Jesus is God. This particular one I'm titling The Chosen, and you'll understand why in a minute. As I've said before in my previous videos, one of the best ways to understand Jesus as being God is to look at the self-understanding of Jesus. What does Jesus say about himself, or where does Jesus place himself based on the things he says and does? And this video is going to continue in that vein. So in the New Testament, there's this thing that's going on where the Father has chosen us for Jesus, and that's basically what Ephesians 1:4 says, John 6:44-65, Luke 18:7, and Matthew 25:34, and these are just some of the examples. But there seems to be this overall theme where the Father is the one who chose us for Jesus. So the salvation plan is a marital covenant where a father chooses the bride for the son. And of course we're the bride. Now this on its own is actually very fascinating and interesting. However, it doesn't really tell us much about Jesus being God. But there's another phenomenon that's going on in the Bible that we should take a look at. The other phenomenon that's going on is that Jesus chose the 12 disciples. He himself says so in Mark 3, John 15, and John 6, and those are just some of the examples. And so it's very interesting that the Bible is pretty clear that the Father chose us for the Son. However, Jesus chose his very own disciples. So why is that? Why is that Jesus got to choose his 12 disciples? And the second question that I think should be asked is why 12? Why 12 disciples? What's going on there? Is there anywhere in Scripture that seems to explain this to us? Well, I think that there is. If you go to Matthew 19:28 and Luke 22:28-30, Jesus tells his disciples something very interesting, and we're going to go ahead and look at Matthew 19:28. Here Jesus tells his disciples, "I assure you that when the world is made new and the Son of Man sits upon his glorious throne, you who have been my followers will sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel." So we see here that Jesus picking 12 disciples, the number 12 isn't by accident. And it was purposeful because the 12 disciples would be the 12 judges over the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, this gets very interesting because if Jesus is just a mere man, then that means a mere man chose the persons who are going to rule over the 12 tribes of Israel. Or not rule over, but judge over anyway. So just Jesus choosing them, which was left to him obviously, he is putting himself in a divine role because he's choosing those whom are going to rule over or judge over who God chose, because God chose his 12 tribes. You can read Genesis and you'll see that God meticulously molded history, such as rejecting Esau and choosing Jacob. He molded history in order to get his 12 tribes and his chosen people, his people of Israel. So it just doesn't seem to fit to say that Jesus is a mere man here. Jesus seems to think that he has an authority to do this and is placing himself in a divine role. And there's something else going on here too, because clearly Jesus seems to think he's the Son of Man who's going to have himself a glorious throne. And of course that throws back to Daniel 7, and where this person who Jesus seems to think himself to be is to be worshipped and be a king and all that stuff. And then you could rightly ask, who exactly does Jesus think himself to be here? If his very own 12 disciples whom he chose are to judge over the 12 tribes of Israel, who does he think himself to be here? Well, obviously he seems to think himself to be the head. He seems to think himself to be the king, the leader, the Lord, however you want to put it. So Jesus seems to think he's the centerpiece of God's kingdom. So not only does Jesus usher in God's kingdom, he's picking who's going to judge in it. He's outfitting it. So Jesus is clearly placing himself in divine. And well, that's actually pretty much it. So there you have it. that's one of the cases that you could put forward to demonstrate Jesus as thinking himself and placing himself in divine roles. But there is something I want to say here, and that is that I've actually tried to look up and try to figure it out, because if the 12 disciples are to judge over the 12 tribes of Israel, it just seems like a possibility that every one of the disciples actually come from one of the tribes. So each one actually represents a tribe. And I don't know if that's actually the case. However, I do know that Paul, and I can't remember what it was, says that he comes from the tribe of Benjamin. But I don't know if the others actually come from each of the other particular tribes, and they all are going to, judge or whatever their own particular tribe. But it seems, quite possible and even likely. But as far as I can tell so far, there's no way of proving that. But that's just a little side note there. But anyway, that's it. Thank you for watching, and God bless.